I'll ask anybody's question but yours. You're an idiot. And really a disloyal person.
I understand that the Syracuse Orange fan base is of a certain demographic as seen by most people. And I don't think I'm helping that with the title of the podcast this week. Because the Orange star in Footloose this week. And I'm wondering how many people under the age of 30 know what the movie Footloose is.
Oddly
or the musical,
enough,
for that matter.
I was just eating dinner in Tully's, and the Footloose theme was on.
Ironically enough, also the musical Footloose for people of my demographic as well. Because that came later.
Yep, it did.
For those who are somehow not getting the reference, Footloose, of course, the movie where the town banned dancing. And Orange will not be dancing for, again, a number of years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what? How many in a row?
I think it's 3 now.
It might be. Not great, Bob. Not great.
Not great. And I said in earlier editions of the Disloyal Idiots podcast here on the Fans First Sports Network that myself, Steve, and Andy, when Andy would be here, would talk about a discussion that many Syracuse fans wanted to have a discussion about 3-4 months ago, maybe even starting last year. We will now have that discussion because now is the right time to start having said discussion, especially with news about what has come out about the decision that is revolving said discussion. We're not going to beat around the bush either. We're going to talk about it. It is about the state of the Syracuse men's basketball program right now in Syracuse. And the big topic that surrounds the Syracuse men's basketball program right now is the status of Adrian Autry. Now, it has been confirmed last week on Q Sports Talk on ESPN Radio Syracuse with John Wildhack talking to Stephen Fonte and Paulie on their show that Adrian Autry is coming back next year.
Right.
There is no coaching decision that is being made this year. Adrian Autry is at the very least coming back next year. Wildhack went on to say a couple other things about, expecting about Orange basketball expectations, about, what they expect from the program. But at the very least, Red will be the head coach next year for Syracuse.
Right. Which I think most people in the know assumed was going to happen. And that if you look at it objectively, knowing Syracuse and knowing Syracuse's athletic department, this was a foregone conclusion that was strictly signed off on by Wildhack, verbally. Like this was something. It's not like this is a surprise to any of us that have been paying attention.
Absolutely not. And just given the track record of how Syracuse coaches amongst the major programs, I'm talking about the dome sports. Just going off of Syracuse's track record on how they've administratively run their big money programs, and again, I'm talking about the ones that play in the dome.
Yep.
I think there was no way they were going to make a change, because again, let's look at the major dome programs. It took a while for John Wildhack and Syracuse to move off Dino Babers. It took forever for them to move off Coach Quentin Hillsman when women's basketball started, slowly, going down. But women's basketball was still hanging around the tournament bubble when Coach Quentin Hillsman was still on the team. Before that situation arose. Obviously, we know about Boeheim, and we know about how the lacrosse programs never changed coaches, except for when Desco retired, and that still questioning about whether or not that was actually a retirement or a let's make a move, since Desco's reign as the men's lacrosse head coach was definitely not as fruitful in the last few years of
I was
his
gonna say,
tenure.
quite fruitful early, and then kind of fell off the track really hard.
Exactly. But when we talk about the dome sports, coaching changes have not been common and have not been frequent. And to consider that Red was only completing his second season at the helm of the program, when the previous administrators have never had to make a head coaching change
Yeah.
for that program over the last 40 years. I don't think a coaching change was necessarily ever going to be on the cards.
No, realistically, it wasn't. And I get, private university and all, do we have any inkling of what Red's contract or buyout would be?
Absolutely not. Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah. I
We
want to say he
what I will
will
say
next
is
year be a lame duck, I guess is my question.
perhaps, but what I will say is that we might have rumors about what the contract is, but
Yeah.
definitely nothing that is public and on the books. Again, Syracuse private university.
Yeah. So it'll be a long time before we find out what those numbers
S-
realistically are.
So, given all of those reasons, I think we can confidently say that Red was never going to get fired. He was never going to. There was never going to be a new head coach coming into next season because
Right.
of all those outside factors. Now let's take those factors away. In a vacuum, was this season worthy of? Okay, Syracuse has to make a coaching change in a vacuum.
Well, are we talking a Syracuse vacuum or a true vacuum?
A true vacuum, because again, that Syracuse vacuum does bring a lot of outside factors.
Right.
Because we've already mentioned many of those outside factors already.
Right. I mean, we're looking, if you took into account, we're coming off a 20-12 year. We knew even going into it that this team was a little light on star power. Right. Like we
Yes.
knew it was kind of JJ and Co.
Mhm.
I think we were hoping Eddie would have figured things out a little earlier than he seemed to. I think we would have hoped some of the other folks would have stepped up a little earlier than any of them did. Jair Davis kind of came into his own towards the tail end of the season, but that was a little too late. At would we finish 14-19?
Yes.
I don't think even in a true vacuum, this would have been can the coach, like knowing what we did coming in of the construction of the roster, of what we were facing, especially early schedule wise, like our non-conference for a Syracuse school looked more like what Syracuse schedules up for their football out of conference than it did for a normal basketball season. There's a lot of factors that went into the fact that, even in a very quote unquote bad year, and for some people, and I've seen it tossed around like the worst year of basketball they've seen Syracuse play, like they're 14-19 and 7-13 in conference. It's a lot better than most schools would expect to have, especially for their worst year in ages. Do I think this is an excuse and that, that things don't need to shift and change and move this offseason? No, absolutely not. Like Red is the hottest of hot seats going into next year. But I don't think this year, no matter what had happened, would have been the year to move from him. Especially if you take the vacuum out of it and what's coming in next year.
So that does beg the question. It's tough for me to see, like, in a vacuum, it's a 6-win drop off, which in college basketball, unfortunately, is massive.
Yeah.
That should not happen. That cannot happen. The home record is actually not the worst thing in the world. 11-6.
Well, but it's a 6-win drop off when most of your team that was not brought in by this coach either transferred, was academically ineligible, or like there was so much roster turnover, and then your star freshman gets injured, and then your star point guard gets injured. Well, point two, whatever the hell you want, combo guard,
And you
gets
question
injured for a
how
good
much
chunk
of
of the
and you question how much of that injury affected him
right.
throughout the year.
Yeah, I mean, even the tail end of the season, he looked significantly less comfortable than he did in the beginning of the season. Like, you come off a major hand injury when you're playing basketball. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a basketball professional. Something like there's coming back next year, he's going to look a very different player, I feel. And Freeman going down, like, for all of what he didn't look like in the first half of the season, you're a true freshman. You're going to come into your own as the season progresses. So what's like, how many what ifs are there with those two?
And Benny Castillo scores his
Was that an Iker Casillas reference?
No, there was something that I was looking up that didn't realize was playing through the wrong thing on my computer, because I've got two different audio sources plugged into my computer right now.
I'm running with like 4 right now, so it's
Exactly.
trying to make sure it works is like I hope that works.
Mhm.
Does Chance Westry exist?
Maybe. Well, the topic you brought up again brings up the question that a lot of internet argument has started with for this season, and it's how much of this season comes down to roster construction and coaching decision / ability.
Yeah.
Because from what it sounds like, Steve, for you, a lot of this season comes down to roster construction and basically talent ability based on what was available for Syracuse. There are so many times this year where it's so tough for me right now to understand what was at the core of the problem, because that is at the core of the problem. Are you sure? Like, how much blame do you place on this season? Is it the talent level that was brought in / left as well, you could say, and how much of it was just in-game coaching decisions?
Right. That, I mean, don't get me wrong here. Like, I'm putting a lot on the roster. There were plenty of dumb things Red did during the season. There are plenty of coaching mistakes. There are plenty of things that are issues. But you preface that with what he's working with to coach as well.
What I feel like for most people online, though, the main reason why people want to see Coach Autry fired is mainly because on that sliding scale of blame, which it feels like that's the main sliding scale of blame, roster construction and coaching decisions, it feels like it's extended more towards the coaching decision side of the tree, where a lot more people are considering, yeah, okay, you didn't have a great roster to begin with, but at the same time, you would, I think a lot of people would say, well, a coach should be able to, no matter what, those are still talented players. It's not like Syracuse didn't bring in talented players. Jaquan Carlos had a great career at Hofstra. I mean, Jair Davis, I believe, was the leading scorer at Delaware, or was at least putting up double figures regularly at Delaware.
Yeah.
I mean, Eddie Lampkin was just, always being a workhorse at TCU in Colorado.
Right. But
like,
at the same time, Eddie Lampkin, you've mentioned 3 guys that 2 of them did not play at this level. And one of them may not have fit this roster as well as we hoped him to early in the year. Eddie being a, the point center, like, his passing ability out of the paint requires a lot of off-ball movement. It requires guys cutting. It requires guys moving without the ball in a manner that this team does not do.
And again, just to play devil's advocate here also, because, there is a side that, I still partially believe in as well, which is how much of that is, okay, that's a guy who doesn't fit in your system, but how much of that is also, hey, this is clearly one of your better players on the team. Let's at least coach our team so that somewhat, in at least some part of the game, they can play around the strengths of one of our better players.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And with that situation, it's not so much I guess I'm trying to figure out how to put words to it, because it's not so much that I don't think Eddie played to this. Like, I don't think Red could coach what Eddie does and what the rest of the guys are doing. You know what I mean? Like, there's certain tendencies guys are going to have. All of our perimeter guys like to stand around. No matter how much you yell and bitch and moan at these guys, they're not going to be mobile, guys flying around without the ball, guys running the baseline, guys that are cutting left and right. Like, any of our slashers were guys that were moving to the hoop with the ball in their hands, not using that to try and open the floor or using that to try and change spacing. There was a lot of, for lack of a better term, Boeheim ball going on. Which, coaching tree high, but like it looked like a lot of times the offense looked like you could poke the guy with the ball with a stick and say, hey, do something. And it was a weird, I guess the more we talk about it, it really is a chicken and the egg of like, these guys, it's a roster construction issue, but like what could they have done differently that could have altered what could have happened with the guys that got constructed together, if those are words that work in a manner.
And I'm still not clear myself on where my slider is on the scale of roster construction and coaching, talent, decisions, ability, whatever. What I will say, some of the other like things I've seen online is a common thing when it comes to the people who think it was a coaching ability that is to blame for the season and why Autry should be fired, is mainly because of a thing that is a holdover from the Boeheim era as well, and that is lineup decisions based on playing time, especially playing time in key situations, lineup decisions in key situations, and things like that. I mean, the most common one I would float is the SMU game where Lucas Taylor was red hot from 3, and then the Mustangs made their comeback, but a lot of it was mainly because the Lucas. A part of it was that Lucas Taylor was not great. Well, I wouldn't say not great. He was awesome in the SMU game, but Adrian Autry had him sitting on the bench for a good significant chunk of that game. After he was starting red hot, and was looking for a different decision, coaching wise, to
I
forget if it was the SMU game or the Virginia Tech game. It was one of those.
It happened in the SMU game, okay. And then there was especially towards the tail end of the season and down that home stretch, there were definitely some quizzical sub decisions and some in-game coaching.
Because you also go back to one of the key trends of this season as well, where Syracuse would have double-digit leads at some point, especially in the second half of games, and then Syracuse just failed to absolutely close out those games as well, and would lose in brutal fashion. You think
I was going to say, by fail to close out, you mean just completely let the wheels fall off?
Yes, because again, you go to those 3 losses at the end of the regular season: the Pitt game, the Virginia Tech game, and the SMU game. Even to a small extent, the North Carolina game, and of course the Miami game.
Yeah,
like those last 5 losses to end the season, Syracuse had a chance to win all of those, and this season looks much different if Syracuse wins all of those. And we're having a much different conversation if Syracuse wins all of those as well.
Yeah.
Because you could theoretically say in all 5 of those games, Miami, North Carolina, Pitt, Virginia Tech, and SMU, Syracuse each had a chance in all 3 of those games to win those games. And you could have said that Syracuse should have won at least 3 of those games.
Yeah, so if you win, of course, those were the games. 3 of those games, you're 17 and 16.
Yes,
you are 10-10 in conference, and this is a very different looking team.
Well, let's take a look at also let's take a look at it also ACC bracket wise, as well as I try and frantically pull up the ACC tournament standings and what the excuse me, the what it looks like for the
what the seating would have been.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly what the seeding would have been for the ACC tournament. So if I go to the ACC right now, so Syracuse was 7-13 in conference. Let's say that Syracuse wins 3 out of those 5 games.
Yeah.
That puts them at 10-10, which would tie Georgia Tech. So Syracuse would probably have played in that Georgia Tech game, which was the 8-9 game.
Right.
And at least that's more doable, and at least you get the first round bye. And of course, you go up against Duke, who knows what happens.
Yeah.
But
I
at
mean,
the same
we know what happened prior, but
exactly.
yeah, no, but at the same time, when you look at it, like you look back through the season, there's a lot of what ifs. Like we put it on those 3 games, but like the Pitt game was a 4-point game. Like the Notre Dame, the stupid Notre Dame loss. Like
let's go to the Brooklyn. Let's go to the
Yeah.
Brooklyn games, not the
Yeah,
Maryland
both of
game,
them.
obviously, but both of the games against the Texas teams in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Syracuse was within single digits and had the lead in those games.
Right. I mean, both 4-point game and a 5-point game.
Yeah.
Like there was a lot at Georgetown. That stupid loss was a 4-point loss.
At the first Notre Dame game also.
Yeah. The thing is this
which goes back to
this, but the thing is we did this what if after I hit my mic in the complete opposite direction when when we've looked at the 2018 football team.
Yes.
Of like, they won these games. What happens if one possession goes the wrong way? Hell, last year for football, like there's a couple of games that if it's a 7-5 team, and that's a drastically different feel coming out of a 7-5 season, but with very minimal change in what actually happened. And that's the thing with this team is like, yeah, there were points where it didn't look great, and there was a lot of times I was frustrated, and I think that's why I'm leaning more on the roster construction and what happened. And like I said throughout the season, this team is like, it would have been, 2 guys, like 2 studs away from making us a very good team. And like, think about who we had that left. I hate playing that what if game. Actually, I love doing it because it's just mildly ridiculous. But like from the guard slot, you've got Q, you've got technically Judah Mintz as a junior. Justin Taylor, Woody Newton, remember that name? Bryson Goodine, Kadari. Like there's your guards that all were gone or transferred out, and a bunch of walk-ons as well. Small forward, you had Benny and Big Bad Bob,
who it still has some eligibility for some reason.
I don't know how, but hey, more power to him. And then Malik at power forward, who I wish he didn't get hurt, because I still even when I saw him in the Dome playing that Duke game, I was like, yeah, I just love his game.
Dude, Malik was a monster in the Dome.
Yeah, he was. I just love his game. Him and Q were the 2 that really hurt when they transferred for me. And then, I guess Munir Hima and John Bolajak really didn't move the needle much, but yeah, you have, imagine this team, even if it was Q and Malik that stayed.
Yeah, it feels a lot different.
Yeah, it's a completely like Malik probably plays the 3 even, or like, yeah, it's a
you might be able to do the thing I've wanted Syracuse to do it and move Copeland back to the effing point.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
which I'm pretty sure is what he's playing for McNeese State right now, who, by the way, is in the tournament as one of the highest AQ seeds of the mid majors.
Of anybody that transferred, I believe he probably had the most functional season.
If you want to turn, yeah, I was gonna say, because
like
that's
Malik's
the argument.
numbers may not be exactly the same as they were at Cuse, but he's doing it on a very different roster.
Exactly, and his impact on the game grows far beyond the stat sheet.
I've got a couple of buddies that are good good friends that are huge Duke fans, and they were like, "Why did this? How did you let this kid go?" I'm like, "I don't trust me. I didn't want him to go."
We've referenced these a couple of times, but there are some good articles on how that happened. In particular, if you're thinking about it on the leak side, there's a great
Yep.
article from the Daily Orange about that.
Mhm.
And of course, just on the roster construction side, there's a great article from Mike Waters and a few series of articles as well from Donna Tota and
Yeah.
Chris Carlson on Syracuse.com.
And those all shed some light on the why of what we're all talking about and how it happened. And again, when you read those and find out the whole story behind where we're at and what's going on, you also can kind of piece together why Q's not on the hot seat.
Or Red, you mean?
Right. I'm looking at Copeland. I'm literally looking at Copeland's name and saying Q. But yeah, Q should be on whatever hot seat he could the other Q should be on whatever hot seat he could possibly be on, because
So, you referenced the why. And those articles from Syracuse.com clearly illustrate the why. We went over that on a podcast a couple of weeks ago. Feel free to check that out if you haven't already. Let's get into the how. Because, Steve, you clearly think this is a roster construction thing for Syracuse basketball. So,
Right.
if you're in the shoes of new general manager Alex Klein, who came into the Syracuse program in July, so well after the roster for this season has been set.
Right.
This is Alex Klein's first year to help build a roster for Red and the Syracuse men's basketball team. Obviously, we don't know who's going to be in the portal, and you shouldn't trust Steve and I about the minutia of which basketball players would be good to fit in Syracuse in terms of specific names, because we don't follow
No.
college basketball that closely for that.
If you ask us about football, it's maybe a different story.
Maybe a different story, yes.
But let's
But if you're Alex Klein, what are the types of players you're looking for to fit into this Syracuse program? This is also working under the assumption, and this is not a clear assumption as well. This is working under the assumption that you have players like JJ, Donnie, Choppa Moore stay.
Yeah, so let's level set this first.
Mhm.
So assuming with the roster that we have, here are the names that are leaving. That Carlos is gone, Taylor is gone,
Mhm.
McLeod is gone, Lampkin is gone.
Jared
Everybody
Davis
else
is also gone.
Jared Davis, I thought, was a junior.
He's a senior. He walked on senior day.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Maybe they found some eligibility, because I really liked his game towards the end of the year.
Yeah, he started getting into it. Yes.
Yeah.
So that would leave the people
The
who will be staying.
non-walk-ons.
Yeah.
As,
As Kyle Cuff Jr. theoretically, because even though he walked on senior day, he's a redshirt junior somehow.
yeah, he did say he was coming back too.
Yes. So Kyle Cuff Jr., Donnie Freeman, JJ Starling,
Mhm.
Chris Bell, Peter Mistorovich,
Yep.
Elijah Moore, Chance Westry,
The
if he's
ghost
ever
of
healthy.
Chance Westry.
Yes. And that's it.
Right. And then you have coming in Kyan Anthony, Sadiq White, and then Aaron Womack and Luke Fennell. Are they walk-ons? Okay.
No,
Or
those
are they-
two are scholarship.
Oh, those are 3-star that we grabbed. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
those are 3 stars.
No, I remember when we picked them up. Okay. So they're, but again, guys, you're not expecting to make an immediate impact.
Maybe Luke Fennell, because a lot of draft guys are already
Pretty
were
high on
talking
him.
about Luke Fennell when some NBA draft guys were talking about Luke Fennell when he announced his commitment to Syracuse.
Okay.
Mhm.
Do we have any idea whether he or Kyan end up in the swing mold, or if they're like true twos?
I couldn't tell you. That's
Okay.
I think. Yeah, I don't know them. Again, this is where the unfortunate thing about our podcast is that even if we had Andy on here, the three of us
It
don't
doesn't
necessarily
help
have
much.
we don't have the
Which,
basketball knowledge.
for those of you, we are looking to grab some basketball knowledge here and there eventually. Here, like as a guest, to kind of do a recap on this, but
We're
Christian
all
and I
busy,
are not those people.
and the people we tried reaching out to, they're all busy.
Yep. So that puts, position by position, at the point you've got Kyle Cuff Jr.
Or is it JJ again?
No, but I'm saying, like,
Yes,
If
of
in an
true
ideal world,
yes of
if you
true
want
points.
like yeah,
Mhm.
because if JJ's, I guarantee if like you put him on an ideal lineup, he's playing the 2.
Yes,
So you've got Cuff and half a JJ. At the 2, you've got Moore, Anthony, Fennel, and JJ.
Mhm.
3, you've got Bell and Womack? Question mark.
I think I'm not sure about Womack.
And then Donnie Freeman, Sadiq White at the power forward, and Mastorovich as your center.
Mastorovich, the second coming of Marek.
Yeah, who was the second coming of oh God, what was his name? Oh,
This
why
is
can't I
all
think?
you, buddy.
Oh no. Yeah, it'll come to me at like the 59-minute point of the podcast.
It will come to you at 7:00 when you're taking your son to school next
Yeah,
morning.
100%.
Mhm.
For one, we need something like I like Peter's game.
Mhm. I like Peter,
He cannot be our only center.
which is one of the reasons why Boeheim was like to Dolezaj, hey, don't come back for another year, because remember Dolezaj had one more year,
Yeah.
theoretically a COVID year, to come back for Syracuse, but
Yeah.
Boeheim was like, Mark, don't, because I don't want to subject you to playing center again.
Yeah, you need to go do something else.
Mhm.
So there needs to be a tall person we bring in somewhere. Beyond that, like I mean, both ends of it. It looks like the middle of the lineup where we have options, we have depth. Yes, Chris Bell is a enigma at this point. I
So
can't tell if we. What's that?
yeah, so from what it sounds like you're saying, like based on roster construction wise, Syracuse needs a true point guard and a true center, which is tough.
And those are 2 of the toughest positions to find.
Mhm.
So, I mean, off my gut, that's your 2 priorities. Any thoughts on your end?
That would be my priorities as well, just because it feels, as ironic as it might sound to some people, it feels like Syracuse has scoring. And I feel like every year Syracuse has scoring.
Yeah.
But it does. But if you didn't have Donnie Freeman, if you don't have Donnie Freeman on the floor, and we saw this year, there seemed to be a lack of physicality at times underneath. And then as if Carlos just wasn't on his game, it didn't feel like the offense flowed at times.
Right. Which it seemed like was more often than not.
Exactly.
It seemed, I mean, when he was on, I really enjoyed what he was doing, but it seemed like he did not find the flow all that often. So, and this is, again, yeah, I don't know. It's crazy.
For this podcast, it is a little bit tougher to like try and get into a deeper dive on that. But it feels like that's really all it amounts to, is that, okay, Red's coming back next year. This offseason is crucial. And if we're going off of what, and it starts right now, no matter where you fall on the sliding scale of roster construction or coaching ability, it has to start. Roster construction now has to start, because even though, yes, more and more programs are hiring general managers to help with roster construction, you can be damn sure that the coach still has a big say in who's coming in and out of the program.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's the GM can only do so much when the player has to play for the coach.
Exactly.
And it's a little different when I know we didn't have one in the time, but like when you're in the position of being the GM of someone who's recruiting for, say, a James Arthur Boeheim, and you can just be like, hey, this guy over here, Hall of Fame, come on. Instead, it's, hey, this guy over here played for a guy that was in the Hall of Fame and kind of coached with him for a while. Maybe I'll like him. Like, it's a little tougher sell.
And at the very least, Syracuse can at least take a little bit of umbrage to the fact that Alex Klein has spent a year now under Autry,
Yeah.
and can now also say, okay, I have some experience under Autry, and so I know what he wants
Yeah.
out of his roster, and how he coaches and things like that. So you would assume that he has a good idea of how to build a roster that will fit Autry's coaching style and what he eventually wants from his program, which makes next
would-
seat the
yeah.
hottest of hot seats. Which brings up a question that's probably very impossible to answer before we move on to other things. What is the record/position in the ACC that Syracuse needs to be at, or what is the finishing result that Syracuse has to be at next year in order to save Autry's job? Is it a NCAA tournament bid? Because we know that's tougher to come by than most in the ACC nowadays. I mean, just look at Selection Sunday today.
At the same time, I don't know if you can gauge it any other way. Like if you as a AD are saying we want Syracuse basketball to be what Syracuse basketball was, you have to hold it to that standard. Like there's no two ways about that. You have to. You can't settle for, unless there's extraneous outside factors or something else that's affecting it. You can't settle for a fourth year in a row missing the tournament. It just seems agreed. And 3 years is a normal stint for coaches to get. So personally, I hope that Red isn't a lame duck this year, just because 26 recruiting could drastically hurt from that. If he can't say, hey, you're committing here to play under me, it kind of changes what his recruiting ability is and what that GM's ability is. On the flip side, it doesn't really matter as much from the transfer portal and in the NIL era, where, okay, come here, play for me next year. Who knows what's going to happen after that? But yeah, it's a weird situation all around on leaving him kind of hanging as that coach.
Well, you know what's not going to leave you hanging, Steve?
I think I do, Christian. I think I do.
It's our good friends at Homefield Apparel, our sponsors of this podcast. And you can go to homefieldapparel.com right now and use the code NUNES24, that's NUNES24, to get 15% off your very first order at homefieldapparel.com. You can get a Syracuse t-shirt, one of the comfiest long sleeves, some awesome hats that they have a lot of right now, a lot of great Syracuse hats right now, as we're getting to that point of the year. So why not pick up some of those? Or if you're looking for something cool like a bomber jacket, they're unfortunately sold out of the Syracuse ones, but there are plenty of other schools that you can get as well. And you can even get some racing gear inspired by the Indy 500 that is coming up in a couple of months, and some other great swag as well. Or even partake in their core collection, which has some of the comfiest everyday wear that you can possibly get. So go to homefieldapparel.com right now and use the code NUNES24, that's NUNES24, for 15% off your very first order at homefieldapparel.com.
And, to be fair, if you're listening to the podcast, it shouldn't be your first order.
Exactly. But you can tell your friend.
Oh, why didn't we get in on the quarter zips?
We should have.
Damn it.
Yes. Because those quarter zips look very, very comfy.
They really do. That's an I would rock that to work during the NCAA tournament all day.
Indeed.
But I don't see a Syracuse one. So say Levy.
Steve, do you know what tomorrow is? We're recording this on Sunday, March 16th.
St. Patrick's Day?
No, tomorrow is for
yes,
for
but
yeah, tomorrow for you, and I'm not sure because obviously you're busy, so you might not know this. Tomorrow is Syracuse Pro Day for the football program.
Oh, okay.
And which
I did not
means
know that.
yeah, which means we officially kick off the start of the Syracuse spring football portion of our program.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts with Pro Day. And also, I'm not sure if you've seen this as well right now. A couple hours ago, Syracuse on Twitter for their football program released a new drone flyby footage of the football facility that has
Yeah, that was
completed
great.
construction,
That also that facility looks awesome.
which is exactly what you hoped for. Like that. That looks like at the very least, it's not obviously the. It's still. I don't think it's at the level of like some of the SEC schools, but
No,
like it is definitely worthy of a high Division 1 program.
yeah, we're firmly back in the game. Let's put it that way.
Yes, exactly. That's a type of facility that will definitely encourage people to that will not discourage people,
Mhm.
um, especially for football. That is very, very good for football.
Absolutely. No, it's good to see them putting money where it can make a difference. And it will help recruiting. It will help at least staying with the Joneses in this rat race that is college football at this point, like or arms race, I guess, at this juncture. Uh, yeah, I mean, I'm sure everybody on the squad is excited about that too. Are they officially moving in for the spring? Are they in yet?
I'm not sure actually.
Yeah.
That is a great thing to figure out. I'm actually looking through my email to look at a couple of things right now. Um, because I'm still also believing that most of the stuff that we'll do for spring practice will be at the Ensley Center still as well. And I'm pretty sure that's where like media will congregate as well
Yeah.
for after certain spring practice sessions.
But you
start.
know what's not going to happen near Manly?
Please, what?
The spring game.
I was about to get to that as well. The spring game is definitely not happening near Manly. It was going to,
Yeah.
because of dome conflicts. Um, Syracuse was going to have a unique spring game experience at the SU soccer stadium with a tailgate in the Colvin lot. But
Which
now
would have actually been pretty cool.
that would have been very cool. It would have been very intimate. But now they can. But now with Billy Joel announcing the movement of his tour dates from Syracuse due to illness, he will. The dome has suddenly got an opening, and so Syracuse will transfer that to the quad, which will still be a very nice experience. Which is, I think, something that I think Fran would like as well, because you can update the game experience on the quad,
Yep.
and then play in the dome, which is what you always wanted to do in the first place.
Absolutely. And I, for the first time in many years, am going to be missing the spring game.
Oh,
yeah. So I will not be there to get eyes on it. I will be down in Vegas. So.
Oh, look at this guy.
Yeah. Trust me, it's the my parents are going to be out there and can stay for free, so we're bringing the kid out. Why not?
Oh, we're starting him early.
yeah, he's going to go sit in a sport book. No, he's we're going to go.
No, I thought he was going to sit at a blackjack table. That's what I was insinuating.
It's going to be like the kid on the front of the Galifianakis and the Hangover.
Yeah, and super bad. Yes.
Yep. Now we're going to hit a couple of national parks while we're out there for him. So figured we'd take advantage of the free room and board. Should be a joy, but I get to miss the Syracuse spring game for the first time in I don't even know how many years at this point.
Yeah.
That's been a staple.
What we will say is that also, unfortunately for you, Steve, the spring game is not going to be televised this year. Instead, there's going to be a 1 hour all access special for Syracuse this year in lieu of televising the spring game.
Which I still think is a very dumb idea. What else does ACC Network have to do?
That is a good question. I'm not entirely sure, but that is a thing. And that also, I don't think that's an ACC Network decision. I think that's a Syracuse administrative decision.
Yeah.
And so this was all told by an SE spokesperson to Syracuse.com as well, by the way. So,
right. Okay.
Like that's as official as you can get. Of like, yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Mhm.
So,
if you do want to see Syracuse this year, you have to get out to the Dome this year. And there's a good crowd at the Dome last year. You have even more incentive now this year to go.
yeah, last year was just downright impressive. There were as many people there as I've seen for some games. So,
And of course, because Billy Joel was was scheduled to be at that Dome, that means there's not going to be any other athletic events that are happening at the Dome during that date. So
Yep.
it's not going to be like last year where they can essentially just pummel everyone and like try and retain people from the Virginia game that was at the Dome at that
Right.
time.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm all sorts of off right now.
I just realized that's the reason why Syracuse Cornell is not playing at the Dome this year, or one of the reasons.
Oh. There you go. Guess you got to drive down 81.
I have to do a lot more than drive down to 81 if I want to catch that game.
Oh yeah, I forgot that's the stupid Stony Brook one or whatever, right?
Yeah, Long Island.
Yeah. Or are they playing at Hofstra or somewhere?
They're playing at a facility apparently that's across from UBS Arena, where the Islanders are.
Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
Whatever. More exposure, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be
for two New York teams in New York.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that's going to air on, like network wise. Actually, I'm gonna look this up now. Yeah, they actually don't have a TV set for that yet, ironically, but I'm assuming that'll be a good game wherever it's aired on. To wrap up the quick football thing that we hit on, spring practice will be starting soon. We'll have pro day coverage tomorrow as well to see who throws and plays in a pro day, and you assume that all the major Syracuse players are going to be there.
Yeah.
The 5 combine invites. Of course, we'll expect Meeks and Barron as well, and maybe a couple others.
Anybody expecting to get on as a UDFA?
Yes.
Should be a good showcase, and I'm sure we'll see some good footage coming out of there. And they'll, especially with the level of talent, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a good bit of chatter coming out of there too. So, good.
You expect you expect a lot of good. I just from what I've heard, like there's a lot more good draft chatter around Syracuse players than in previous seasons. Like more so than some other guys who you might have expected to get taken in later rounds.
Yep.
But combine performances and Senior Bowl performances, Shrine Bowl performances have been very, very important for this team. Let's touch on 2 more quick things before we wrap up our podcast this week. Of course, the brunt of it was basically the basketball moratorium.
Yeah. Complete postmortem on that, because that's going to take much more of an autopsy than we can give it. But yeah.
Steve, how much do you like hidden ball tricks?
Depends on the sport.
Well, of course, we're talking about lacrosse. Did you see the hidden ball trick last week that Syracuse pulled off?
I did.
And that's an important win for Syracuse, winning 13-10 over Johns Hopkins in a dome last week. They essentially had a week off this week, as their next game is not until Tuesday, so they had the weekend off. But the last game was a perfect right back on track game for Syracuse that they desperately needed after a couple of tough losses to Maryland and Harvard.
Yeah, that getting the W against Hopkins is definitely. I mean, it's always good, but especially good to kind of get them back on the wagon. That did cause the two of them to flip in the polls this week as well. Looks like Syracuse is back up in the top 10. Hopkins dropped to 11th.
Yeah, and coming into that game, Hopkins was 7th and Cuse was 11th.
Oh, okay, I was thinking they were 9th.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, outside of Maryland, it seems like
Well, the Harvard game as well. That's the big tough one.
Yeah, that was
Mhm.
that was rough, but they're I don't know. They seem like they're a good team that has some moments of what the hell is happening.
Indeed. Owen Hill, I mean, offensively wise, that can happen at times. It feels like sometimes they try to do a little too much.
Right.
But when it connects, you get a 4-goal performance from Owen Hiltz, 5 points from Joey Spoina. Shout out to Tyler Cordes, who stepped up on the second midfield line with the season-ending injury to Jackson Burkwhistle. And Cordes picks up 2 goals and 2 assists. So
yeah, no, and they'll have what tune-ups for the next couple of weeks here.
it's starting to become only one tune-up because
Colgate's number 15.
Exactly.
Damn, where'd that happen?
Colgate has beaten some actually good programs, and Colgate all of a sudden has actually turned to a really good offensive program. Their first 2 games of the year, they did lose. It was a 14-9 loss to Penn State and then a 19-9 loss to Virginia. But then you look off who they'd rattled off and beat. They beat Harvard and Villanova to get into the top 15. It will back off for them. They just lost a 1-goal affair to Bucknell this past weekend. In their 3rd game of Patriot League play.
Right.
But that will still be a Colgate team that is, for one, looking for a lot of kickstart because Colgate loves a good upset against Syracuse in the Dome.
Yep. Yes, they do. Oh, wait, what sport are we talking about?
Yes.
Speaking of upsets in the Dome, last Monday.
Yeah, I was working that game from behind the scenes, and this was the Syracuse women's lacrosse team dropping yet another heartbreaker to a ranked team. This time it was against Johns Hopkins again. This was a 6 versus 7 matchup with Syracuse at 6 and Hopkins at 7, and Hopkins storms back to win in overtime after Syracuse started the game up 6-1.
Yeah. So this team is 5-4.
Yeah.
And have gotten boat raced by North Carolina, lost convincingly to Northwestern, and then 1-goal affairs against every other ranked team they've played.
Exactly.
Either wins or losses.
The things that are keeping Syracuse women's lacrosse afloat right now are its preseason ranking and the teams they've lost to.
Right.
Because of course the teams they've lost to are very good teams.
Yeah, I mean, what's Clemson looking like right now?
Clemson, I think, just lost their last game. They're
6-3 and just dropped to. Wow, they've lost 3 in a row.
Exactly, yeah.
Duke, Mercer, and UNC.
The big one is the Mercer one. That's a huge upset.
Crazy.
But Duke's also ranked. I believe Duke was 17 at that time, so nothing to sniff at. And of course,
13 now.
And then of course UNC is
still number 2.
It's going to be another year of. It's going to be another year of Boston College versus UNC versus Northwestern.
Yep.
For the best of the best.
Which it would have been nice if Syracuse was in that conversation, but it's not looking like it.
Still some tough.
We're up to number 6 at 5-4.
Yeah.
Mildly insane.
Well, the rankings get updated on Monday, so tomorrow that definitely will change.
Oh, because we jumped. No.
Yeah. They were 6 when they played Hopkins.
Did they jump? They jumped 10 spots because they beat Harvard? That doesn't make sense.
No, they were. I forgot exactly where they were, but when they played Stanford, I forget what rank they were when they played Stanford.
Yeah, whatever it's showing here, this is still week 5. ILL.
No, when they played Stanford, they were number 10. So they jumped 4 spots by beating Stanford in overtime, and that was a number 6 team, Stanford.
Huh. This is very strange.
You might be looking at the wrong poll.
No, I'm on Inside Lacrosse's poll, but
That's what their ranking was the previous week. Not
you know what I'm doing? I'm reading
you're-
things wrong. Hey,
Steve's thinking that Syracuse jumped 10 spots and
I was
said
like, wow,
they
they're
were
up
ranked 10
dang.
last week. Yeah,
No, they were 10th and they moved to 6th. Okay,
Yes.
that makes more sense.
That's
Got it.
good. Mhm.
Yep. Okay, cool. Glad we figured that one out.
Just so you know, that number 4 team in the rankings right now, Yale. Syracuse has to play at Yale or later this season. So
Great.
right now in the
That's 7-0,
current
yeah.
yes, and so right now in the current women's lacrosse poll, Syracuse is scheduled to play each of the top 9 teams, and
Nice.
or has played each of the top 9 teams.
Sure. That's going to be great.
Yep.
I mean, if they can get things together, that makes for a great
Yeah.
resume builder.
Well,
But
unfortunately for Syracuse women's lacrosse, for those who aren't following, for them, they do not have Olivia Adamson anymore for the year, out due to a lower body injury. So it is Emma Ward and a lot of underclassmen.
yep. So build for the future, I guess.
Yeah, this is a good building for the future year, but a lot of these underclassmen are getting thrown to the fire.
Got to figure it out sometime.
Yep. Well, no better time than the present.
Absolutely. So
Before we end this podcast, as you know, we are our sister site is noonsmagician.com. You can capture you can see some of my work there and past Steve's previous work for football there as well, especially when football gets more ramped up into the regular season. And I'll be posting football coverage based on pro day and spring practice as the spring practice schedule rolls on. We do want to extend our heartfelt thoughts and prayers to our managing editor at the site, Kevin Wall, who unfortunately is dealing with a family member loss. So we extend our heartfelt thoughts and prayers to him.
absolutely.
Well, that will do it for this week's edition of the Disloyal Idiots podcast. Alongside Steve Heller, I'm Christian Guzman. We look for Andy Pregler on the milk carton once again. He will hopefully join us for the next session. If you're watching live on Twitch, Twitter, or YouTube, you can. First of all, thank you for watching live on our live stream. We'll usually do these Sundays at 8 p.m. You can catch us there, and you will not miss a stream if you go ahead and follow or subscribe on your streaming platform of choice. If you're listening on your podcast platform of choice, we thank you as always for listening. Give a like or a rating and leave a comment so that we can trick the algorithm into expanding the Ottoman Empire. It's going to be an interesting time as Syracuse evolves in the offseason for both football and basketball, and as lacrosse rolls on. The only thing we can do for that, though, is say, go Orange.
Go Orange.